Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host. And right now we have with us Ed Deitsch. Ed has been on the show before because he was a candidate for the House of Delegates in the 42nd District, I believe, which is in the Springfield area, give or take a few streets. And he is back with us this time in his capacity as an animal rights activist. We talked about it a little bit when he was on the show before, about the work he does for the Humane Society in their rescue, their animal rescue program. And tonight Ed is going to talk with us about the Humane Society, what he does in the Humane Society, and what kind of legislation they have down at the General Assembly now that they could really use your help in order to get passed. So Ed, welcome back.
Thank you, Bettina. Thank you for having me back on. It's always fun to be here. Well,
tell me a little bit about this National Disaster Animal Response Team, because you're on it and you periodically I'll see you and you're flying off someplace or you're coming back from someplace. What's that about?
Well, as the name implies, when there are natural disasters going on, we have teams that go into these areas immediately afterwards to help rescue the animals that might have been left behind. And then you have the volunteers like myself who go in and we help set up the emergency shelters so that once these animals are found, we have a place to hold them, care for them, feed them, water them, make sure they're taken care of properly. If they need medications, getting that to them until the owners can come back and claim their animals. Now, two of the major ones I was in Joplin almost immediately after the tornado devastated that area, and we took care of over 1,700 animals in that location. And I was called up into New Jersey 2 days after Sandy. So it's one of those things where we always say if you see a lot of cars running away from something, you'll probably see our trucks going in. Okay. Because we're usually hitting in where everybody else is trying to get away. But the biggest part of what we do is not that. We're very heavily involved with the criminal aspect of it. Puppy mills, dog fighting, hoarders. And we'll go in and a lot of times it's hundreds and hundreds of animals that we'll be rescuing from really bad abusive situations. And again, you know, I'm not a field responder, so I'm not going into the building to get these animals out, but I'll be on the scene helping set the shelters up. And these animals all become part of an evidence chain. So all we can do is feed them, care for them, make sure they're healthy until such time as the criminal case is heard. Most of the time, I don't know where I'm being told to go until the very last second because we have to keep the areas confidential. And it's a criminal case, it's evidence. And I mean, recently I was down where we were taking care of in the shelter I was in 170 pit bulls that were taken out of a dog fighting scenario.
Oh, wow.
I was told it's a confidential location, and the reason for that is if people are willing to fight these animals, sometimes to their death, they're not above stealing them out of these shelters when we're putting them someplace. Ah. So we can take no pictures, we cannot post on Facebook and Twitter or anything else. When you're there, it's undisclosed location, you go in, you spend 12 to 14 hours a day in the shelter caring for the animals. You go back to the hotel, you eat dinner, you grab a quick night's sleep, and you're back again in the morning. And this is ongoing. I was just down in December. This is a case that started in September. They're still looking for volunteers to come in and out of there through the end of February as of now, while they're still waiting for this case to be held.
Oh my gosh, that's an enormous amount of work.
It's an enormous amount of work and it's an enormous amount of cost. The Humane Society has half of the dogs from this particular thing. ASPCA has the other half. Each one of them, it'll cost over $1 million to care for these animals until this case is heard.
Oh my gosh, so who pays for that?
Well, right now it's obviously paid by donations. Okay. As part of the case, when they win these criminal cases, it's part of the judgment that this money has to be paid back. Unfortunately, more times than not, the money isn't there to pay it back, so they never see it.
So they never see it. Okay. Well, let's talk about some legislation, because we looked at this Humane Society as ratings by state, and apparently we get a 56% rating, Virginia does, by the Humane Society. Apparently we have a good law against dog fighting, and of course we had that whole thing with Vic and the dog fighting down in the other parts of Virginia. But there's a couple of pieces of legislation that they have this year that they would like to get passed. One of them is the fox penning bill, which when Dave Marsden, Senator Marsden, was on the show a while ago, he mentioned it. It didn't get through last year, is that right?
It got through the Senate last year and then was killed in committee on crossover day.
Okay, so for people who have no clue, because I certainly didn't, what is fox penning? What's the issue? Well,
the issue with fox penning, there were several issues involved. First, you're taking an area that's anywhere from 10 to maybe 50 acres, sometimes a little bit bigger. They're completely fenced in, razor wire on the top. Now, foxes themselves are very territorial. They'll stay within a 5-6 mile area their entire lives. They know where to hide, they know where to put their dens. But because of what takes place here, these foxes are brought into the pen, so they have no idea where to hide. They're let loose in the pen after a day or two, theoretically, to acclimate themselves. And then the hunting lobby comes in with their dogs, their hunting animals. They're training them, supposedly, on how to catch prey. So they'll release anywhere from 200 to 800 hunting dogs into this pen to try to catch the fox, and the one who gets the fox first, they get a trophy, they get a cash prize. Not very good for the fox, however, as you can imagine, with several hundred dogs chasing it in an area where it does not know where to hide.
And it can't get out, because you said the whole thing is fenced.
It not only can't get out, there have been times where, because they put food in various areas in the pen to entice the fox to go there, black bears have been known to climb in, and because of the angle of the wire, they can't get out. So there was, I think last year or the year before, they did find a carcass of a black bear in there with a lot of puncture wounds in it. The dogs got to the bear instead of to the fox.
Oh my Lord. So what would this bill do?
We're trying to ban the pens.
Ban them all altogether, okay.
Ban them all together. We're trying to get them shut down. There are many ways to train dogs. It doesn't have to end in the death of another creature. Plus, you're violating a lot of laws by importing wildlife. We have laws in our state that ban transporting of wildlife.
Right.
You know, the wildlife in Virginia belongs to you, it belongs to me, it belongs to every one of our citizens. But these people are taking them and bringing them into the pens, and they have to constantly restock them. So there's no way they're breeding them for these pens. They could never fill them. I think there was something about 700 foxes in the last year or two that have been brought into these pens, and there's only 40 of them in a state.
Oh, wow.
So you do the math, you realize how many of them are being killed in this process is just outright cruelty. And this is something we need to stop. Like I said, it did make it through the Senate last year. I've been at hearings with Game and Inland Fisheries. They actually, I won't use the term regulate, they license these pens, but they don't have the manpower to go out and inspect what's going on there.
So this was a bill that was introduced by Senator Marsden, it's SB 42. So what do you want people to do? We're going to talk about this, and we have two other bills we want to talk about in the next 4 minutes or so. But what do you want people to do?
What we need people to do right now, I mean, we have a Humane Lobby Day coming up Thursday, and that's going to have representatives from the ASPCA, Humane Dominion, the Humane Society of the United States, and approximately 80 citizen lobbyists like myself. None of us are paid. We go because we care. And there'll be about 80 of us there. But that's not enough. What we need is for people to pick up the phone, call their delegate, call their senator, and say, this practice needs to stop, we need you to vote yes, and get SB 42 passed. And this way we have a chance to, you know, we know it'll probably get through the Senate again, but we want to make sure it gets out of committee this time. If enough delegates are called and told this needs to pass, they tend to listen to their constituents.
Right.
So that's our hopes on this, that it will be put through this year, finally putting an end to this.
Okay. Now let me ask you about the other law that was introduced, and this one is a Bailey's law, something about dogs and puppy mills. This is your puppy mill thing, right?
That's
this
correct.
is Chap Peterson's bill.
It's Chap Peterson's bill. It's Senate Bill 228. And what Bailey's law is designed to do, puppy mills have only two audiences to sell their dogs to. They could try to do it, you know, roadside or through the internet. You know, if you're looking to buy a puppy and you're told, we can ship it to you from Missouri, don't worry, you don't need to see the breed, you know, the dogs. Odds are it's a puppy mill. But if you go to a puppy store, anywhere, not just in Virginia, basically anywhere in the country, those dogs came from a puppy mill. And what Bailey's Law is designed to do is disclosure. We want the stores to tell you, we got this dog from a puppy mill. A legitimate breeder, legitimate backyard breeder, will never ever sell their dogs to a puppy store for them to sell to you. Okay. They want to know who their dogs are going to. Who's going to take care of this dog? I mean, with my background with animal rights and the fact that I'm also a retired veterinary technician, my wife and I recently adopted a new puppy. And we had to go through an application, a phone interview, a home check, and then sign all sorts of contracts telling them how we're going to take care of this dog before they turn this puppy over to me.
Good heavens.
That's what legitimate people will do. They want to know who has their dog, who's taking care of it. The puppy stores right now have no accountability. They're selling dogs that are sick. And you can't even, if the dog was really ill, you couldn't return it to the store after a certain amount of time. Because they're going to tell you, no, you took the dog home, it's yours. Okay. So Bailey's Law will change all of that. It'll make them more accountable. They'll have to tell you where these dogs came from. You'll have to get the full medical history of these animals. And it's almost like a lemon law on puppies that'll allow you a lot longer period of time for you to be able to bring this dog in and say, this dog is extremely ill. You need to do something. And that'll stop a lot of this. And if it makes the puppy mill people a little more miserable, oh well.
Oh well.
Yeah.
That's not, so, you don't care about that. That's
not in the least. Having been there, I mean, one of my dogs at home came from a puppy mill. We've had her now almost 2 years. She's just learning how to be a normal dog.
Wow.
Usually it takes 2 to 3. Fortunately, she had some other dogs in the house here and there to help her along. And she's doing really well right now. But she didn't know how to step on grass when we first got her home. It was bothering her feet. So,
well, we've got a minute left. So let me ask about this domestic violence victim legislation, which comes from Ben Klein.
Right.
And what does it do in 30 seconds?
In 30 seconds or less, this is House Bill 972. Okay. Right now, pets at home, domestic animals, are considered property in the state of Virginia. So if you have a protection order that you've taken out against domestic violence, the animal is not covered. So the other half of this problem, the one who you've got the protection order against, can use that animal as leverage to get back at you, can use that animal to prevent you from leaving, prevent you from coming back in the home. If it's included in the protection order, then the police will allow you to go back in, get this animal. It's no longer can be used as a weapon against that protection order.
All right, well, Ed, thanks for coming, and good luck on all of these. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Bettina.
For over 35 years,
por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
El Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals,
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos,
are a small part of what we do.
Son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia.
Comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
Ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton. I'm your host of Inside Scoop Virginia, and I have with me David Broder. David is here in his capacity as the legislative chair of the Northern Virginia Aging Network. The last time you saw him here, he was here in his capacity as the president of the SEIU Virginia 512. But today we're talking aging as opposed to labor. So David, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you were here last year. We talked about the legislative initiatives last year. I'm assuming some of them carried over. One of them, I understand, is a bill that has to do with financial fraud, which was a big topic last year. So what's this year's legislation about financial abuse of the elderly about?
Sure. Well, I'll say this is a vitally important session for older adults and for all of us, really. And it's great to see us make some headway from what we did last year. And things are moving very quickly. We had movement today. So House Bill 312, which is patroned by Delegate Toscano, would help minimize fraud perpetrated against older adults. And what it specifically does is ensures that the victims of fraud can recoup their legal expenses from their exploiter in court, which is something they can't do now.
That has to be huge because the costs of trying to recoup this usually causes people not to pursue their rights.
That's exactly right. It's the biggest problem after the actual financial exploitation of older adults, which is all too common, is that there's no real avenue for folks to be able to get any kind of legal remedy. And so we're very excited that today in the House Courts Committee, they voted to pass that bill out unanimously, 21-0. And so it goes to the full House of Delegates in the next few days. And so we'd love to ask all your viewers to call their delegate right away, call tomorrow, and ask them to support House Bill 312. It could have a real impact on older adults this year.
Well, that's amazing that anything got out of a committee of the House of Delegates on a bipartisan basis. That's really amazing.
I think that really speaks to how important older adult issues are, is that even this year in Richmond, when there seems to be the potential for so much gridlock, these are the kinds of issues that I think voters care about and want to see the legislature act on. And so it's actually just one of several bills that I think we're very optimistic about passing this year.
Well, what other bills are you optimistic about that?
So also today was a great day at the General Assembly, very fitting, I think, for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. One of the other important aspects that we are pursuing is around expanded voting access. We believe that older adults need to be fully included in the community, and one way we can do that is by ensuring that they're fully included in our democratic process.
So what? They can come and vote just like anybody else.
They can, but as you know, Virginia has very restrictive voting laws. And so several senators put forward a bill this year to expand no excuse absentee voting, or early voting as it's sometimes known, to older adults age 65 or better. And again, we had a bipartisan coalition working on this. Senators McWaters, Favola, Barker, and Miller all had bills in on this. And that bill passed the full Senate today by a 28-10 vote. Again, a very impressive bipartisan majority there. And it now goes to the House, where it was a version of this was previously defeated in a subcommittee. So again, we would ask your viewers to call your delegates today, ask them to support not only HB 312 on financial exploitation, but also Senate Bill 16 to expand voting access for older adults.
Well, I can just hear all of the younger people that I know saying, why are you discriminating against me? I'm a younger person. Shouldn't we all have no excuse early voting? I mean, what's so special about older people that we ought to be making a special rule for them?
I think that everybody needs expanded voting access, so I hope that this is just the start of that. But one reason that this is particularly important is right now older adults can get curbside voting access. If they have a hard time getting to their polling location, they can drive up to the curb and 2 volunteers who work the polls come out and help them vote. And what that means is that we are taking away election officials to help everyone else vote. So by allowing these older adults to vote absentee early, we're actually freeing up those folks who work at the polls on election day so that everybody can get in there and have a quicker, easier time voting. But I do hope we get to see the day where Virginia joins so many other states in ensuring that more people can participate.
Okay. And is there any sense of what the House is going to do this time?
You know, we hope that the House will take a look at what the Senate did, and again, this bipartisan 28-10 victory, and maybe rethink the vote that happened in the subcommittee. But I know that that will only happen if these legislators hear from their constituents. So again, call up your delegates, to all our viewers at home, urge them to support Senate Bill 16.
Well, and I do want to say, for people who don't know who their delegates are, they can go to the State Board of Elections and put in their address, and it'll tell you the district, and you just go and plug that into a Google search, and it'll tell you who it is and how to get a hold of them. So do it, because these are important issues.
That's exactly right. And the Virginia General Assembly website, which is virginiageneralassembly.gov, all one word, is a great resource. You can also put in your address. It can tell you how to contact your legislators. It can even tell you how to arrange a visit down to Richmond.
Which legislators just love to have all their constituents coming in to talk with them. So hopefully they'll do that. What else is on the agenda? Because it's an extensive agenda this year.
It's a big agenda, and I think the whole agenda is organized around the idea that we need to do much better for older adults. Right now, Virginia does not do a very good job in helping seniors age in their homes. And so I think we need to be much more thoughtful and much more purposeful about the policies and the budgets that we put in place. And if we do that, we can help ensure that not only older adults live in their homes and thrive in their communities, it's also going to be good for local businesses, it's going to be good for local economies, and it's good for all taxpayers, because we can spend our pretty limited long-term care dollars in a much more intelligent fashion.
Now, is that an issue in Northern Virginia? I mean, I know this is the Northern Virginia Aging Network. We didn't have a lot of aging in place in Northern Virginia in years past, and I know Fairfax County has sort of gotten on that to say we need to do something different, because people aren't coming working for the federal government, or in Fairfax's case, moving out after your kids have gone to the schools through the school system, and it's become a big issue. Is this a statewide issue, or is this particular to Northern Virginia?
I think this is a massive statewide issue. In every community, a lot of those traditional structures that were in place to help take care of older adults aren't there anymore. Whether it's adults who moved here to Fairfax, their children aren't here, or a lot of young people in rural parts of Virginia who've moved away. We are facing, as many folks say, an age wave as the baby boomers set to retire. And if we don't start doing something about it now, it's going to bankrupt our state budget, and we're going to have a lot of older adults living in poverty. We're going to go back, I think, to the situation before Social Security, before Medicare, where 1 in 2 adults lived in poverty, older adults, and I know that nobody wants to see that.
So what specific legislation is out there that addresses some of that?
So a couple of things that we need to do in addition to the bills we mentioned before. One of the most vital things we can do is Medicaid expansion. I know lots of guests talk about Medicaid expansion. The governor has made it a priority.
But Speaker of the House Howell says no.
You know, I'm seeing some movement in Richmond, and so I remain optimistic. And I think just like on these other bills where we've seen bipartisan agreement when it comes to older adults, what often gets missed in the Medicaid expansion debate is that this would provide health care for 63,000 older adults aged 50 or better. There are a lot of working older adults who don't have health care. It would also provide health care to the tens of thousands of long-term care workers who help older adults stay in their homes. So Medicaid expansion is really vital for making sure that older adults are going to be able to thrive in the community.
Well, the issue of the people who help folks stay in their home is massive, because you have a lot of people who they don't make enough money, they don't have the health care, they don't have vacation, they don't have relief of their own, and being a caregiver is a very difficult process to deal with.
That's exactly right. We rely so much on our long-term care and our home care workforce. They are providing one-on-one care for the people we love most in the world, our parents, our grandparents. And yet, as our friend Sherry Lejeune says, we pay our dog walkers more than we pay our home care providers. And so I'm glad to see that there are a number of Northern Virginia legislators who've been working on this issue. Senator Favola, Delegate Brink, and Delegate Simon have put in budget amendments amendments that would pay home care providers a living wage and offer 5 paid sick days, which is a very modest start, but right now they have no paid sick days. And Delegate Hope has put in a study to look at what is the rate that we need to pay and what are the benefits so that we can recruit a really world-class home care workforce for our loved ones.
Well, how do we define a living wage in Virginia? Because I see like in Maryland they're doing a new minimum wage. Well, how do we define that? Is it defined in the legislation, or is that just sort of a loosey-goosey term?
I can tell you how we don't define it, which is right now home care providers earn $8.86 an hour with no benefits. And can you even imagine living on $8.86 an hour?
No.
And yet that's what we ask tens of thousands of home care providers to do. So these budget amendments that Senator Favola and Delegate Brink are championing would raise that by 10%. Now that only reaches $9.75. It's a start, but it's a good first step to getting towards a living wage, which in our area people have estimated at anywhere between $15 and $22 an hour.
Oh my gosh. So we are way below what we actually need to do.
We've got a lot of work to do, but I'm hopeful that we are going to take a big step towards that this year.
Well, talk to me a little bit about public guardianships. I know there was a legislation put in on that. What's a public guardian? Why do we need one? So
the public guardianship program in Virginia is a really wonderful program that too few people know about. It helps at-risk, incapacitated older adults who don't have family or friends to help them. It helps them navigate the system and makes decisions so that they don't get left behind, become homeless, or sent to the emergency room. Right now it's helping about 600 older adults. It's a great program because it really improves the quality of their lives, and it also saves a lot of money by avoiding those ER visits.
But 600 people is like nothing. I mean, what is this money that the legislation gives more money to it, or is expanding eligibility, or what's it doing?
That's exactly right. It's a lifesaver for those 600, but there are 900 on the waiting list. Some estimate up to 1,200 if they knew they could get placement there. And so for those 900 to 1,200, not only is that costing taxpayer dollars more, it's really devastating for their lives. And so while there was a little bit more money in the budget, we need to be able to address those challenges. And so again, Senator Favola and Delegate Chris Peace have put in budget amendments to provide even more funding there. So another area where we have bipartisan agreement on how we can use our taxpayer dollars more wisely to assist older adults.
Well, I guess since we all have older relatives, bipartisanship is not too surprising in this area. I want to thank you for coming on. As usual, you have just been a wealth of information. Folks, go call your delegates, support this really worthy legislation. I want to thank you, David Broder, for coming on the show. And
Thanks so much for having me.
We will have you back.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week, year-round. With loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged, where teachers have more time to teach, and students are excited about learning. There's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
It's coming. Right to your neighborhood. And when it does, you may be surprised. It's your Social Security statement of your benefits, and it's going to help you plan your financial future. Your benefit statement will tell you how much Social Security you're eligible to receive and when you'll get it. Then you'll know how much you need to save for retirement, because that's coming too. The future is in your hands. Choose to save.
The toxic fumes from this meth lab are seeping into Jamie's sinus cavity. Ammonia vapors invade her throat. Toxic gases fill her lungs. Jamie's body is deteriorating. And she doesn't even know it.
Jamie, dinner.
So, who has a drug problem now? Find out how meth affects you at drugfree.org/.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host, and we are going to be talking about women politicians, or more accurately, we're going to be talking about the lack of women politicians. And I have two absolutely fabulous guests with me who know all there is to know about this, and they're going to share it with us. They didn't know they knew all there is to know about it, but they do. I have with me to my immediate left, Kate Hanley. Everyone knows Kate Hanley. She was the chair of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for a number of years, in addition to all of the other things like being the Secretary of the Commonwealth under Governor Tim Kaine, and she was the supervisor for the Providence District, and she was on the school board. So if there is anything you need to know about local government, Kate Hanley is the person who can tell you. Now, to her left, we have Susan Platt. Susan has a whole lot of national experience. She had 30 years between her state and federal experience. Her last official position on Capitol Hill was as chief of staff for who is now Vice President Joe Biden. And she has worked extensively in elections, winning elections that were tough, that people didn't think were going to be won. She has done absolutely yeoman's work with any number of women candidates in the state of Virginia that I'm personally aware of. And she is also a founding member of the farm team, as was Kate, I believe. They are now both on the board of something called Emerge Virginia. So I want to start by saying thank you so much for coming on. You're very tough to get to come on, I know that, and I appreciate your willingness to come.
Thank you.
I do want to start back with the farm team, because that was started what, in the mid, like 2008 or something? Okay.
2008.
Okay, so what is the, and it still exists.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what does the farm team do?
The farm team was started in an idea that a few of us uppity women thought we needed in Virginia to elect more women to office. It was Mary Sue Terry and myself and Kate and any number of other very active women decided it was time that we did something to help elect more women to office in Virginia. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a quote that Lyndon Johnson used repeatedly, that is, if you're not seated at the table, you're on the menu. And we thought it was time that we take that back. So there were 23 of us that went down to Mary Sue Terry's farm in Kreitz, Virginia. It happened to be calving season, which meant that her cows were giving birth to little baby calves, which is where the name the farm team came from. And it was organized by 23, as I say, Democratic women to help mentor and elect other Democratic women across Virginia.
The other thing that the farm team indicates is that in the baseball analogy is that you have a farm team that then people come to the majors. Right. And we haven't had a woman in statewide office since 1993. Mm-hmm. We've only had 3 women ever in Congress from Virginia. So we need to have a bench. We need to have a farm team so that women can move up through the ranks. I'm of course a local government devotee, but I think it's important to have women on school boards and councils and boards of supervisors and in the House of Delegates and the state Senate, but we need to have a farm team to work up so that then they can run statewide and for Congress. So that's my vision of the farm team, is to have a bench.
Okay, now so what is Emerge Virginia then? What is its purpose?
Well, Emerge was started in 2002. Virginia is the 13th state, which we began last year in 2013. We found with the farm team members, we were doing a lot of great work for other women candidates across the state, but women were craving more scholarly learning, if you will, on how to do tactics of campaigns, how to do better media consultants, how to do better field work. And really this has begun to more level the playing field than we had in the past to help women succeed. And we also will continue to do mentoring with them as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to realize that one of the things we discovered as we got into helping women one-on-one run for office, that there's some things you have to know before you run for office, and that you're more likely to be able to win and be a successful candidate if you've had an opportunity to think about those things. And so this Emerge has a curriculum that helps have people not only think about what office they want to run for, what the effects of running for office are on your family, on your personal life, all those kinds of things that people get into running for office and holding office and are terribly surprised that now they belong to the public. And of course, now they do belong to the public. So there are a lot of things to think about. One of the things we talked about was what kinds of things you might do in the community. What are your interests, and how would you represent a constituency? And all those kinds of things that need to be thought of before you declare, as opposed to after you get into it and go, wow, I didn't know I was going to have to raise all this money, or wow, I didn't realize that people could ask me to do something at 7 in the morning, or those kinds of things. So there was a great need for training before people get into office. And the other thing is, we need to have younger women taking the training, because I don't anticipate that all these women that take the training will run the next year. And some of them might already be in office, but it gives them time to think about their career. You know, I used to be a school teacher, and I would ask, when I'd have kids come into my office as chairman, and say, okay, to a class, how many of you ever thought you could be president? You know, and the guys would all raise their hand, and the girls never did. And so that's the kind of thing. We're changing it a little bit, but we need to change it some more.
But the statistics in what I read, and I think you've got somebody, I don't know if she was a founder, it's Jennifer Lawless, who has done a whole lot of work on this, and that doesn't seem to have changed. I keep waiting for it to change, because I remember years ago when I first became a lawyer in 1980, women didn't run for office. You didn't see a lot of women in office, and we all kept thinking, well, this is a pipeline issue, and people will simply start running as more women, you know, pursue different avenues and different interests. And here we are 30 some odd years later, and we're still having the same conversation.
Well, let me tell you what we've seen now with the Emerge Virginia. We've just completed the interview process for our incoming year, first year of students. We have had such an overwhelming response, but it's been so heartening in that we've had women come in that are 66 years old and women that have come in that are 22 years old.
Really? That's quite a span.
A tremendous spectrum from people and people who want to get involved, from women who said, I fought that fight before, I thought, but I think I need to continue. And from women now who said, I haven't fought that fight yet, but but I need to do that. And those are the 22 years old.
See, and I sort of have some sympathy with the 66-year-olds who say, didn't I do this before? Because I feel that way all the time.
Didn't we fight this fight already?
Yeah, I thought we were there. I thought we finished that, and we keep going back on all kinds of issues. What is prompting? I've always sort of been frustrated with younger women who don't seem to get it. They don't, you know, they seem to be relying on the work that was done and not realize that the fight isn't finished, and that if they're not vigilant and if they don't put themselves forward, that we could lose even more ground.
One of the things that's happened is, if you talk to, there's a really an age gap and understanding that before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which did a lot of things, but as you know, it also made discrimination against people on the basis of gender illegal. And people since then don't remember before then, so that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect, I think, is that politics has, it maybe never had a good name. Of course, I'm somebody who agrees with Larry Sabato that politics is not a bad word. But that it's gotten so intrusive personally that that women who will serve locally don't want to go into the broader arena because it's more aggressive, it's tougher, it's nastier, it's more expensive. And they tend to think of, you know, that's my child's college education possibly that I'm spending to do this. And so while we had a farm team going, a bench going, they sort of moved out, or they don't move up because of the nature now of politics. And social media has changed politics. You have to be aware that you are, you know, on stage at all times.
There's always a camera.
We also have a number of women here in Virginia that we're training, and we've been training with the farm team, who have younger children at home. And they feel they just cannot take that time away. And I think that's part of the reason why we have this disparity in the age. The 22-year-olds are interested, but they haven't had the family yet.
Right.
Once they have the family, then it moves to the 40, the 50, and the 66-year-old woman that came the other day. Because now they have the opportunity, they have the life lessons, and they have the desire to make the world better for their children.
One of the things people will always ask you when you're running for office and you have small children and you're running to go to Richmond, who's going to take care of your children while you're in Richmond? So you have to have that answer, because the rules are different, the questions are different, the how you go about campaigning is different for women. It's evening out, but it's still not equal.
Well, I was going to say you lose a whole span of time if you've got to wait until your kids are sufficiently autonomous that people aren't going to look at you and say, bad mother, which no doubt means bad senator, bad delegate, bad everything else.
But you never hear bad father,
exactly,
bad father.
And that always drives me insane. You know, and I was actually just thinking of Marcus Simon, who's marvelous. He has wonderful children. They were out there on the campaign trail. I was at a number of debates. I never heard anybody ask Marcus, who's going to take care of your kids?
You know, there's only one woman currently in the House of Delegates who has school-age children, Eileen Fillercorn. One.
Really?
School age, right.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah,
I had no idea. That's really awful.
So that's what we're about. We're out there trying to be sure that we level the playing field. And the other, to your point earlier, is if you have to wait in life till your kids get to be autonomous, as you said, then women start later, and so they age out earlier. Well, no, they don't age out earlier, but they age out sooner in their career.
Right.
So that you get to be 70, and you've only been in politics like 5 years or 10 years. And so it's a complication, but we're going to fix that.
All right, well, we're going to have to talk about how you're going to fix that, because it's very discouraging to sort of hear all of this and say, you know, you start behind and then you've got to overcome. The guys are already halfway through the race, so to speak, and you're just starting out again. And
well, we have an opportunity tomorrow. Those in Fairfax and Loudoun County, go out and vote for Jennifer Wexton for State Senate.
That's right. In the 33rd, we have 10 or 15 precincts in Fairfax County, and the rest are in Loudoun. And what I have said to people, I put it on Facebook. You mentioned social media. Put it on Facebook today when someone said, oh, snow, this is terrible. We have an election. No one will show up. I said, the snow is coming at noon. Vote early. And then you don't have to worry about the accumulation, and you don't have to worry about getting back. Just go and vote early and get it done. And it does, and I want to make sure everybody understands, it will determine the control of the Senate. And all the work that was done to elect our wonderful Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam will be substantially impaired if we end up with a majority Republicans. So we're going to talk about all of that when we come back, because we are going to go to break. And then we're going to come back and talk some more about Emerge Virginia and how people get into it and what you see for it in the future. So stay with us. We will be back right after this important messages.
She's had more than a dozen fractures. And in the next few years, she faces 2 major surgeries to strengthen her fragile bones. She's only 10 years old. Most people don't worry about fragile bones until late in life. For those with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bones are a concern throughout their lifetime. Find out how you can strengthen this child's future.
Diabetes is a killer. After I was diagnosed, I didn't feel sick, so I didn't listen to my doctor. Then it struck. I had a heart attack, then a stroke, and I was only 49.
Most people with diabetes also have high blood pressure and cholesterol, which can cause severe heart damage. In fact, 2 out of 3 people with diabetes die from heart disease or stroke.
Don't let diabetes destroy your life.
Call for your free diabetes survival guide. Choose to live.
to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host. This is Inside Scoop Virginia, and I have with me Kate Hanley and Susan Platt, and we are talking about Emerge Virginia, and that's really about women getting elected to office and the fact that we don't have a lot, and hopefully Emerge Virginia is going to be able to impact that. So I want to talk about what it actually does.
Well, first let me say that there's this quote from the great philosopher Reba McEntire.
My favorite.
To be successful in life and also in politics, you need a wishbone, a backbone, and a funny bone. And those are the things we intend to teach our women, to take that wish, that desire, give them the background, the backbone, the tools to be successful, and actually have fun while they're doing it too. But it's a process that's a 7-month-long training process to give them the tools necessary to do all these things that Kate's done for years as an elected official. Mm-hmm. We've had folks apply from Roanoke, from Hampton Roads, and Northern Virginia.
And Richmond.
And Richmond.
And Central Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Well, then how do you actually teach them if they're from such diverse parts of the state? How is that actually working? Are these people...
by the way, that's one of the things that we're going to talk about is the diversity in Virginia, because in developing a curriculum, there are a number of things that you want people to think about, and it's one weekend a month. It's not 7 months straight somewhere sequestered. But there are things that we want you to know the mechanics, knowing about media training, knowing about fundraising, knowing about media training is how to present your message. But there's some other things that you need to think about is why are you running? What are your issues? Why are you interested in? What are you interested in? And why are you interested in representing people? What the effects are, what you need to think about your personal life. Then there's some things that we hope they learn about the political structure in Virginia, because Virginia is very different. And the difference in Virginia, particularly for running statewide, it's clearly not all Northern Virginia, or it's not all Galax, there's some stuff in between. So there'll be various days of topic of those kinds of things. So it's not only the emotional pieces, but it's the nuts and bolts as well. Both things, like don't wear flowers on TV. You'll look like the upholstery, that kind of thing, as well as thinking about how you present yourself, why you want to run. What do you want to be? You may want to be an appointed official. You may want to be on the school board. That may be your interest, and many of our school boards are elected. So it's the introductory thinking as well as the learning about the house.
And do the people who come, you've just finished up your interviewing, do the people come with I think I'd like to run for office, or do they come and say, I really want to be on the school board?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And if somebody comes and says, I really want to be on the school board, they're in a different place with some different things to think about. And if somebody who comes and says, I just really want to be in office, the first thing you want to hear from them is why. Those kinds of things.
Well, we had someone come today, as a matter of fact, who wasn't sure she really wanted to run for office, but she's a master planner in traffic planning.
So
we all know we need help with that. So maybe she doesn't want to run, but she wants to be appointed.
Right.
And coming to this training process helps them decide, do I want to run? Do I have the commitment to run for office? Or do I have a public service commitment at the other side?
Because those are very different. You can have that public service commitment and not have the ability to actually run, because that's just a huge commitment.
Absolutely. And as Kate mentioned, we have to teach women how to present themselves, whether they're running for office or asking for an appointment. It's assumed, you mentioned Jennifer Lawless, it's assumed if you have a man and a woman in the front of the room addressing a crowd in a debate, that the man is qualified, but the woman has to prove it.
Right.
So we'll help give her the tools to try to level that playing field, to let you know that she's probably just as qualified as he is, and in some ways she brings more tools to the table that we desperately need, particularly in Congress right now, on how to work out compromises and how to get things done.
Well, is that becoming more well known? Because there was an article on the front page of the Washington Post just the other day about how women in the Senate in particular were now in charge of the budget, and they were in charge of big issues, and you know, sort of the ascendancy of women kind of theory, that we bring something different to the table. Is that part of the training to say, there is something different that you're bringing, and it's okay because it's needed?
Yes, but of course 1993 was the year of the woman too.
No,
look where that went. So we have to keep at it. It's particularly important. One of these statistics that somebody told me not long ago is they had done some studies on women and when they thought they were being asked to run for office. And women, you practically had to beg them before they understood that somebody was coming to them and saying, you should run. And you have this background, whatever it is, you should run. Some of the men said, you know, that was a good speech, you should run for office, and they said, okay, and they signed up. They knew they were being recruited in a way that women weren't used to being recruited, and so they didn't take that first step either. So that's the other thing we have to talk about is, yeah, you can probably do, if you think you can do this, you can, and the hesitancy is sort of ingrained.
And it said it takes 3 times asking a woman to her to understand that she's being asked to run for office.
Well, how much is the financial, the impediment? Because it costs so much. I mean, I look at some of these, for example, the delegate races that we just went through, and thought to myself, good Lord, you're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for a part-time job that pays you like $20,000 or something. There is something very weird about that. And I would think that women would have some problems thinking, I've got to raise $500,000, because
fundraising, I think, is hard for women, and it's harder for women maybe than it is for men. That's getting, that gap is closing some, but it is a daunting challenge. And I think we have to remember that women sometimes bring other things. They need to raise money, yes, but they also bring sometimes a constituency base. They've been working in school issues and PTA issues, or pre-K, or full-day kindergarten, or starting school later. All these issues and networks now that they built up, that they come with a base that has value, that we have to remember that it has value. But yes, it's very daunting to have to raise, for somebody to say you're going to have to raise $1 million to run for that office. Yeah. And people go, well, maybe I don't want to run. And go through all the nastiness. It's not worth it.
So with the importance of the base, if you've got women who are they're not the 20-year-olds, they've actually had the kids. If someone in that age cohort of the 30, early 40s is thinking, boy, someday I want to run for office, is the good advice to say, well, you're all involved in your kids anyway, so you might as well consciously try and build those networks that will then be there for you when you want to run.
Absolutely. And we had a woman actually that we were interviewing today, and we asked her that exact question. Let's say you're going to run for office next month. What is your network that you can contact? And she sat and she thought, and we said, well, you just told us you were involved in the PTO. Oh yeah, women don't think of that as their network, but they really have a very broad one to draw from.
Excellent. So what else do you teach these people who are showing up then? So you teach them how to deliver a message. Hopefully you help them get a message to deliver, since there are times when you say to somebody, why are you running? And they're like, I don't know.
Well, and that's part of this process.
And teaching them how to deliver that and how to boil it down so that it doesn't go all around Robin Hood's barn, as my mother used to say. And owning your space is important.
And what do you mean? How do you teach somebody to own their space?
Well, I worked with one candidate who was a school teacher, and she was so nervous about presenting herself, and I said, you stand in front of a classroom every day, and you own the space as the teacher of that classroom. Assume that everybody out there at this debate is some of your students. I don't want you to lecture them, but that some of your students, and you're in charge here. Own your space. Project confidence that you know what you're doing, and so that they know what you're doing, and that's important. It's not, you don't need to be shy and retiring about it.
And you project that confidence by us giving you the tools to feel that way. To understand the process, to understand the issues, to understand where you stand on the issues.
Well, how do you also then get them to break into this old boys network? I always hear these stories that say there are certain guys in the state who sort of govern, and if they want you to run for that open Senate seat, for example, you're the one who's going to be able to run for it and not somebody else.
I just can't imagine that happens.
Yeah, I'm sure you can't, Kate, but I have heard this vicious rumor. So how would, in a theoretical world, how would one overcome that sort of, you are not the chosen one? Because so many times it's not the woman who's the chosen one, so to speak.
Well, I think that's a time where you have to just go ahead and do it. If you've learned all the things you need to know, if you know you have something that you want to do, if you have the passion for it, then you should go ahead and do it. And that may cause a primary, that may cause a convention of some kind or a caucus, but you still need to go ahead and do it. And politics, to a certain extent, is a contact sport. So you got to make that contact. You got to go ahead and do that and not give way to somebody else, particularly if you know you're the most qualified. Many years ago, I had a woman. I was president of the Association of Counties, and a woman from a county I will not name, but was out there somewhere, called me and said, "You don't know me, but I'm on the board of supervisors of blah blah blah, and I'm the first woman and the only woman." And the men are meeting in the men's room, so that I can't go in there with them.
Oh, how old school!
Well, that was probably 15 years ago now, and I said, well, wow. I suppose one of the things you can do is go in the men's room with them. The other thing is that's a good place for the Fourth Estate. The press would think that was a very good story, but this was an area where there was not much news coverage, and of course, but she said, I just don't know what to do. Then one other time, I was being interviewed by a Post reporter that was a female, and I went to the ladies' room, and she came in and said, "Oh, I've wanted to do this for so long."
Exactly.
The men keep going into the men's room, and I can't follow them. We stayed in there for 5 extra minutes, just enjoying it.
Just enjoying it.
Yes.
Absolutely. I can totally see that. Totally see that. So, well, we've got about a minute left. So let me ask you, we had a number of incredibly qualified women run for office last year for delegates, and none of the non-incumbents, none of the challengers won. Some of them came pretty close. How do we're going to do it again in another year, so how do we change that? Do they all need to just come in and enroll in Emerge Virginia?
Yes, that would be one thing. But you've also hit on part of it. The power of the incumbency is a power. And when we don't have women in office, we need to keep fighting to get to be the incumbents so that we're playing defense instead of offense.
And let's support Janet Howe's bill to change how we do redistricting and make it bipartisan.
That would be lovely, because that helps immensely to level that playing field. Well, I want to thank you both for coming. Emerge Virginia sounds like an absolutely fabulous opportunity. Go join.